All right, how's everybody doing? Welcome to Monday. Jeez, it's Monday, man. It's August 24th. I cannot believe it. This is the time is flying. Hopefully everybody's doing well. Of course, I'm Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and Chicago Music Revealed. Weekly, daily, nightly, depending on what everybody's schedule is. This week we've got a light schedule. We're actually doing our show tonight with our special guest Brandee Younger, who we're going to bring on here in a second. But also, we are doing Thursday. So we are taking off tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday because in addition to Chicago Music Revealed and Chicago Jazz Magazine, I am also the Director of Programming and Entertainment, as everyone knows, at the soon-to-be opening Epiphany Center for the Arts right here in the West Loop, a 42,000 square foot art, entertainment, and event center. And we are getting things rocking and rolling, opening up September 11th. Tickets are on sale on epiphanyshy.com for our first 5 shows. So you'll have to check that out. I might actually do a special show later this week and just pop on and do a special show just specifically about the announcements and about all the different programming we're going to be doing. But we are COVID safe, limited capacity, and we're setting up a full pay-per-view live stream platform. So anywhere throughout the country, throughout the world, you'll be able to watch concerts from the Epiphany Center for the Arts. So stay tuned for that information. But Ivy Ford tickets are on sale right now, along with Frank Catalano. Tickets are on sale right now. So if you head over to epiphanyshy.com, you can get some of those and be the first. Be the first to purchase some tickets. So, all right. That's enough of the commercial. I appreciate everyone watching, everyone listening, everyone always here. And as I always say, stay safe, stay healthy, stay away from each other. And please wear a mask. I mean, my gosh, what are we doing here? So we can get out of this situation sooner rather than later. I also like to announce and let everyone know, of course, Andy's Jazz Club, they are doing music Wednesday through Sunday. Visit their website at andysjazzclub.com. And also Wayne Siegel, still keeping the Jazz Showcase rocking and rolling since 1947. And that is still happening Thursday through Sunday over there. So check out thejazzshowcase.com for all that information. Now, that's enough of the public broadcasting and all of the services and everything else that I have going on here. We need to bring on Brandee Younger. And Brandee, it is a pleasure to have you on. I have been a fan for years, and I am glad we're finally talking because, I actually played my one foray. I'm a musician. I went to North Texas and everything, and I always like to bring that up so that that at least I know something about music. But I actually played with Lori Andrews, and I don't know if you know Lori Andrews, who's a wonderful harpist, but I actually played a couple of gigs with her when she came through Chicago, and just the sound of the harp in jazz and in R&B and soul and everything, it's amazing. So I love what you just put out that just came out in 2019, Soul Awakening, and we're going to talk all about that, but welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and I love Lori. She's absolutely one of my favorite harpists.
She's a great person too, which is even more fun,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's a pleasure to have you on. Now, before we get into the recording that came out in 2019, and you actually finished recording it in 2013, which we're going to talk about that, but I'm sure it's a great story. But why don't we talk a little bit about what you have going on? We talked a little bit before we came on, and you actually played probably one of the last performances at Symphony Center in Chicago before the pandemic shut us down. So, what have you been up to with COVID? I mean, obviously right now you probably would be slammed like most, professional musicians, touring, traveling. This is the festival season. This is the time to do everything. So how have you been coping and what have you been up to?
Well, it's been weird for everybody. This is usually everyone's busy season. At least, spring and summer.
Right.
So, I mean, thank God for technology, or thank people for technology, because without it, streams have been really working out the best, lately. We've been streaming here, brunch Friday mornings, since about March 19th, March 20th. So it's been a long time.
It's one of those things, and I know you'll probably agree with me, but I've talked to so many musicians from throughout the country about how if it wasn't for this whole situation that we got ourselves into with COVID, I, I I don't think musicians would be doing all the technology that they're actually doing. It actually made everybody just kind of take a pause and say, okay, now we've got to figure this out. And I feel like musicians, it's almost like, all of the great plagues in the history of the world, musicians, artists, creatives always somehow come out of it on the other side and something incredible happens. So I feel like all of this technology is bringing us closer together, but also I feel like, and you can answer this because I know that you've been doing this brunch every Friday. I mean, you've probably run into a lot more people that are now in your audience base than you would have ever done if you were out playing and traveling, because you just wouldn't have had time to put all of this technology stuff together because you'd be so busy, right?
Right. We were joking that you have to be a musician, a sound engineer, a videographer, a lighting technician. You really have to develop all these skills all of a sudden. But yeah, it has been good because we have been able to reach folks that otherwise we would not have. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's the amazing thing that I think, if there's a silver lining, and everybody that watches this show knows what I'm about to say, but if there's a silver lining, I think that you're probably building an audience with casual music fans that never knew who you were, but found you on their stream or found you on the feed, and now they're like probably avid watchers and listeners and hanging out.
I hope so. After, we went March, April, May, June, July, after about 4 or 5 months of the brunch on Facebook, free, we moved to Patreon. And I was sort of expecting the Patreon to just be like my mom, you know,
Yeah,
our
right.
parents, our family. So it was really cool to see like these people that just frequented the brunch that we've never met before. Um, Subscribe. So yeah, I mean, we're grateful. It could be a lot worse, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, that's a great concept too. The live stream brunch, man, I love that. That's incredible. It's a great idea. So, all right, so you're doing that, and you put out this recording last year, but and by the way, I listened to a handful of the tracks. I think there's 8 tracks on there. I think I got through about 5 of them, and I find it fascinating. We should talk a little bit about it, but let's talk about the recording first, and then before I digress and go into harp and music and your background and all that. But I just find it that the sound of the harp and the way that you put the recording together with the different tunes and the different, I mean, there's so many different genres I'm hearing mixed and melded into the recording. Um, how did you, first of all, just think? I remember reading like 2012. It was like, it's called Soul Awakening because it was kind of like the awakening of your band, right? That's what I read in the description of it. So talk a little bit about how this recording came about, and then you have all these special guests on it, and then why you decided to get it out in 2019 as opposed to putting it out back when it was finished up.
Well, that's called poor planning. That's a very quick and easy answer. But, I recorded this in 2 pieces. We did one session in Brooklyn at Bunker, um, and recorded most of the tracks there.
Okay.
And you go through this whole listening period of what should we change, what should we add. There are not enough tracks. Then Desron had a session booked for himself in New Jersey that fell through. So he said, you know what, you're working on this music, why don't you just come and you can have the session. So we recorded, and that was the session with Chris Beck on drums and Robbie Coltrane on
Mm-hmm.
tenor. And we recorded those tracks there. Then back to the whole listening and trying to decide what's going to work. And then life got in the way. The album I didn't feel was ready to put out, but I wanted to put material out because at the time I only had an EP. So this was my first full length recording.
Mm.
And so then I did a live record because it was easy to just do live and put out. And then we did the compilation for Blue Note for Revive Music, and we liked the concept of that. So then the flutist and Drummond, she said, "Oh, you got to do a record of this." So then we did a record of that. So it's like everything got in the way. Then it got to the point 2019's coming, and I said, I can't waste this on my hard drive.
Right.
sitting here. It has to get out of my system. So I just literally pushed it out last year.
It's got to feel good to actually finally get it out and get it happening, right?
Yeah, it's finally like, okay, it's done and it's out. It's off of my computer,
Yeah, right, right. How did the tunes come about? I mean, was this like music that you were writing and putting together and coordinating? I mean, how did the repertoire come up?
It was a combination of tunes that I had composed, and also I wanted it to reflect my harp heroes, which were Dorothy Ashby. We did Games, and Alice Coltrane. We did Blue Nile. Desron produced basically both sessions, and he wrote Solris, which was I think the opening track on the album.
Yep.
So yeah, I just wanted it to combine the different things at the time, 2012, 2013, the things that were present for me in that moment. I wanted it to reflect that time. However, we got fast forwarded to 2019, and I sent it to a lot of people. I said, "What do you think?" And they said, it actually sounds timely, so just put it out. So then I just did it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the sound. The harp to me. I've heard Brazilian harpists over the years, and they'll play with a rhythm section behind it, and if you know how to do it, like you know how to do it, it just fills the sound so much, but it doesn't get in the way of the swing, doesn't get in the way of the feel, because it could be very easily, you could play too much and then it would just muffle everything and it wouldn't feel right. When you first started playing, even outside of this recording, I mean, how did you get interested in playing harp for all of these different styles? And then what was the thought process? I mean, what did you study horn players? Did you study vocalists? Did you study, I mean, because there's not a lot of harpists, obviously Alice Coltrane, but just to get the feel and to get the understanding of how you can fill the sound, how you can't fill the sound, where it would fit in within which each genre, all of that.
Well, it's funny that you ask that, because people don't ask. They do ask, how'd you get into playing this and that, but they don't really ask about the sound. And one of my very first gigs that I had when I moved from, this was after college. So this was after graduate school, when I moved to Brooklyn. Okay. As soon as I finished graduate school in the Village, I moved to Brooklyn, and my very first gig upon moving was playing in Bill Lee's big band.
Oh.
And the reason he liked harp is because it wasn't as heavy comping as a piano.
Oh.
So it was really in those rehearsals that I learned to kind of find sound-wise, of course, competing against the big band.
Well, it's probably a good way to find
But
your little nooks and crannies, right? If you got a big band there, now you're really figuring it out.
Yeah, so that actually helped me to start to understand, comping, actually.
Yeah.
No one ever asked me that.
I mean, as a drummer myself, I know that when I'm playing with different musicians, it's such an important part of the whole thing is to find your space, and that allows you to keep the groove going. And I just find it fascinating because I've heard different harpists, classical harpists. Usually they're playing and maybe they're trying to do something and it's not quite happening. They've got too much sound. They're just not trained. They're not used to doing that. So I'm curious. Like, and I haven't interviewed a whole heck of a lot of harpists, by the way, but I find it interesting because there's so much sound that could happen, but you have to really pick your spaces. And in order for the music to continue to groove and move forward and be appropriate for the genre, you've got to develop a feel. So did you listen to, because I mean, like for an example, I've talked to a lot of vocalists that have listened to a lot of horn players to find their feels and find their phrasing. I mean, did you do that same kind of a thing? Did you listen to a lot of other instruments to figure out your phrasing and figure out where you can place things and then kind of delve back in?
I think, bits and pieces, but mostly learning on the spot. Like with a harp, you play and the sound just rings until it doesn't ring, depending on what harp you're playing. So it's a matter of, okay, I have to play and stop that sound.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't stop it rhythmically, it sounds off. So
Yep.
So yeah, you start to end up hearing a lot of guitar patterns, I think, and you hear a lot of piano patterns that you can mimic along the way. But yeah, a lot of it is just you play and then you stop it. So it's like a double action if
Yeah.
you don't want it to just ring into the next chord
Right.
constantly.
Yeah. Well, and also listening to some of the tracks. I mean, I've listened to other, selections, other music you've put out, obviously, but just specifically about Soul Awakening. Listening to some of the tracks, you're adding so much color in behind. Like for an example, listening to one of the tracks that Ravi's playing on. I mean, first of all, he's improvising over and adding so much color and everything on top of the melody when he's soloing, but then also you're adding so much color and texture underneath, but none of it's getting in the way and none of it's taking away from the overall contour of the song. So that must be something. And you recorded this in 2013. So I mean, fast forward 7, 8 years later, you obviously have probably grown leaps and bounds as a musician. At least you can probably hear that. So I mean, what do you notice, like when you go back and you listen to these tracks, and do you hear, wow, man, I'm still happy with that. That sounds really good. Or do you hear like, okay, yeah, that sounds good, but man, I understood where I was then, and now I understand where I am now. It's amazing how far along I've gotten.
I hear both. Like there are certain things I was like, wow, I don't play that as well now. And then everything else is like, dag, if I had only just done this, because a lot of those songs I'm still playing today.
Yeah.
A couple of them I forgot and I had to relearn from scratch. I couldn't even find my charts. I had to relearn from scratch. So it was a process.
Well, and I find it interesting too because we talked a little bit before we came on the air, and the people that watch this show will know because I've had a couple of different musicians on in the past couple of weeks that have had like their core rhythm section, and then a whole bunch of guest artists that have come on and played on a lot of tracks. And I know from just putting a trio record out or a quartet record out, that's enough of a project, let alone trying to organize everybody's schedules and trying to organize everybody coming in. And then a lot of this stuff, I would imagine you'd have to rehearse some in order to put it down and lay it down. What was I guess my first question on all of this is, you have your rhythm section that you're playing with, at least most of the time on the recording. How did you decide on which special guest, I'll call him, came onto the recording and played on specific tunes?
So specifically for Antoine Roney, um, Ravi Coltrane, I wanted them sort of there in mentor position, right?
Yeah.
It was important for me to have my mentors be a part of this. Also, Save the Children, really good friend of mine. That was, I don't know if you heard it. That's the track with the vocalist.
Oh yeah, yeah, I did. Yes.
And we recorded that for Jimmy and Nelba Green's daughter Anna Grace,
Oh.
because that Sandy Hook happened.
Yeah.
That happened maybe right before that session was booked. So I actually recorded that for her, and I remember in not releasing the album, like, what should I do with this one track? I remember
Right.
being sort of conflicted. So that's how those guests came about. I really wanted to do Save the Children. I was very self-conscious about trying to pull off a Marvin Gaye tune, but that's the tune that spoke to me.
Yeah. Oh, it's
That's
great. It's
the tune
wonderful.
that spoke to me. And Desron's friend, alto saxophonist Lummy Span, he actually helped me with that arrangement um, ahead of time before playing that. And Naya's in California, so we did that remote. We did this like this.
Oh.
We did that remotely. And the funniest
Wow.
of them all was Corey Wilcox played trombone. He was the last addition. Desron said, this track, Respected Destroyer, needs trombone. So he came over and we built a booth for him out of 3 harps. Like,
Yeah.
a nice little booth. And he played into 3 harps.
I love it.
Yeah, so the one advantage to the long period of time is that it did give me the opportunity to be able to add certain things to it
Yeah.
and to change. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's wonderful that you, I mean, put it out, because how many musicians, especially somebody like you who's traveling and touring and putting so many other things out, would even take the time to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to get this thing out. So congratulations on getting it out, and it sounds incredible. Now, for it coming out in 2019, and it had been so long. Now, did you do a lot of did you tour on this one, because you had other things coming out too, I think, right?
There were always other
I
things
know, right?
happening. There were always other things happening. So I just threw it all out in there. I didn't so much tour this album.
Yeah.
We did some concerts, some one-offs,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't do a proper tour for it.
Right, right. Well, and good news, you can't now anyways. So you're not you're not
I
missing
know, I
anything.
know.
Well, so let's talk a little bit, because I know a lot of our casual music fans that watch this show and delve into the podcast as we start putting things out there, and it goes out into the internet world here. I just have to ask. I mean, classical. I mean, you must have started classical harp, I would imagine, and then you moved in. What drew you into looking at other genres to play? To delve into playing harp.
All of my training is in classical music, undergrad and graduate school. But I think that I kind of knew early on that I didn't want an orchestral career.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what I wanted, which explains dipping my hands into so many different pots. So I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted. So I said, I know I don't want to be an orchestral harpist, but let me try this, let me try that. But also, I wanted to play music that I was listening to, whether that was pop, whether that was hip hop. So I did it. I intentionally got into doing hip hop recording sessions. I wanted to do that because that's what I was listening to. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it'd be cool if harp is on this,
Yeah.
or this Dorothy Ashby samples on that.
How,
So
how
that
did you
was
connect? How did you connect into the hip hop scene? Because I was going to ask you, so you beat me to it, but I was going to ask you, I was going to assume that you were probably listening to all these different genres and you're like, why can't I play harp on it? So, but it's one thing to think that, then it's another thing to actually engage and go. And then it's another thing to bring a harp to a studio for like a hip hop session or an R&B session or something. That's a whole other animal. So, I mean, how did you like, did you just reach out to hip hop artists and say, hey man, I really dig your music, let me bring my gigantic harp down to your studio and jam with you?
Do you want the truth?
Yes.
So, okay, I won't make it sound this bad. So I think in 2006 I did my first top 40, which was for Bad Boy. Remember Bad Boy?
Sure, yeah.
Ryan Leslie was producing Cassie's record,
Mm-hmm.
and I played on that record. So that was my first top 40 session. And then, this is the funny part, MySpace.
Oh, no kidding. I remember MySpace. I think I still have a profile on MySpace.
I think everyone still has them floating around and has no idea where it is or what to do with it.
I know.
But that's really, so I took that track I did for Cassie, some tunes of my senior recital. Nat Reeves was kind enough to play My Funny Valentine with me, and I posted that track.
Yeah.
And then I posted some like Bach etudes, violin partitas. So my MySpace music page, you could only have like 4 tracks.
Right. Yeah.
It was like 4 very different tracks.
I love it. And that actually, for those of you that are watching this and listening to it that have no idea what MySpace is, MySpace was like the original Facebook, but didn't work very well compared to Facebook, and it kind of crapped out after a little while. And I guarantee you, it's got to be still up, and none of us have any idea on how to even log in probably and even update a page anymore. But that's amazing. But that used to be really hot. There was a lot of people on there, and I can imagine if you did that recording, that immediately gives you that credibility. When you put it up there, you start getting those views and people start passing around and sharing it. And then, so you just started getting connected that way and people started contacting you.
Yeah, I think, I ended up connecting with Ravi in that way. Um, when his mom passed away and the memorial was taking place in '07 here at St. John the Divine,
Mm-hmm.
I connected with Derek Hodge that way, and that's how I ended up on Common's record, Finding Forever. Like, it actually just sounds like a joke, you know? Although I guess today the equivalent is like, I got that from Instagram. You know, I guess
Exactly.
it's the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
But
I
it
mean,
just seems so crazy because it was MySpace.
well, yeah. I mean, now you would say you DM'd Ravi or you DM'd Eric Hodge. You would, you know, you're went down in the DM, and that's how you got the gig. You know. I love it. Well, you know, I mean, and that goes to show you. See, that's why I wanted to bring it up though, because I've heard this story. Not you're the first on 90 episodes to bring up MySpace, so congratulations. But I have heard from so many really, you know, internationally accomplished musicians. It takes, you know, they might play something and they might play on a recording, or they might do a you know, a couple of dates with a well-known musician or a well-known group or something, but then they keep hustling, they keep pushing, they keep connecting, they keep growing. They don't just sit around and wait for people. They actually keep putting things out there. And that's kind of a key probably, right? I mean, you can talk to that because everything you're doing, you're still doing stuff and you're still making connections because you have to continuously grow as an artist and grow as a in your networking world too, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that for my generation, and I don't want to date myself at all here, but we have to remember that the industry went from CDs and then Napster happened so quickly
Yeah.
that the industry sort of got flipped. So when Napster happened, and then, you know, I remember I was an intern at BMG, and we're in the meetings and they're talking about, like, do you think people would pay for a download? It was like the most obscure idea. So this was like right before iTunes, but we were like not born into the idea of doing things yourself, but we were so young that it was easy to just transition
Yep.
to just doing. So even in this pandemic, you know, people are like, wow, you're doing so much. And I was like, what else are we going to do? We have to keep going, you
That's it.
know?
That's it. Well, and that's a great way to you know, bring up the pandemic and bring up the whole way this entire music business is evolving out of it, because you know, it's interesting because I got brought on as the director of entertainment and programming at the Epiphany Center for the Arts in Chicago that's opening up, and we're doing a pay-per-view platform in addition to the live stuff, but also I talked to ASCAP, talked to BMI about the licensing and everything, and they don't have a license that they can give you as a blanket license where we can actually archive concerts and go back and listen. They only have a live stream. They don't have a sync license because it happens so fast. Everybody just figured, well, YouTube's got it. Facebook doesn't even have one. YouTube's got it, and that's the deal. And all of a sudden, when the whole world shut down, now they see a need to get that put together, but they're just moving so slow to get things happen.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Napster, iTunes, and everything. And that's why all these record labels just didn't know what to do at first. And then it happened so fast. To your point, you know, it was on them, and they couldn't adjust fast enough. So it'll be interesting to see how everybody comes out of this, and especially record labels and ASCAP and BMI, and how they can adjust and take advantage of the fact that all of this music is being put out there on a live stream, and a lot of people cannot archive it on their websites because they don't have the licensing.
Wow. I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, trust me, I didn't know it either until I started really researching it, and I was like, because you know, the last thing you want to do is do a pay-per-view and then have it shut off and get sued by ASCAP because you don't have the right license. So I did a lot of deep dive. But to your point about Napster and all that stuff and kind of where everything is, the technology changes so fast. A lot of times the music business can't keep up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the artists like yourself doing a brunch and doing a live stream, connecting with all these audiences and putting out a recording during a pandemic. Well, a little bit before a pandemic, but it's still chugging along in a pandemic soul awakening. I mean, that just shows you, I think there's going to be good stuff on the other side of this. Now, before I let you go, let's plug Patreon. I know you said that you're on Instagram and Facebook all the time, so we want to send everybody over there and we'll link all that up. But let's talk about Patreon. How can people find you on Patreon if they want to watch the brunch and they want to tune into that?
They can do a simple search of my name, or they could do harp and bass. But my name, Desron Douglas, and we're doing more than we usually do. So we're doing the brunches, we're posting some songs, posting some concerts, posting some teaching aids, which we never do. So that's fun. And on August 27th, I'll be doing a live stream in honor of Alice Coltrane's birthday, on her birthday, right there in the home studio.
Wow. Oh, that's
so
awesome.
I'm super excited. So that's August 27th at 7 p.m. from the Coltrane Homes Facebook page.
Wow. That'll be really cool. So that's going to be on the Coltrane Home Facebook page. That's going to be on their Facebook, on the Coltrane Facebook page. Okay. Well, that's great. And I mean, you know, the fact that you can maneuver, you're constantly continuing to create and everything. I mean, you know, it's great to see, and it's great that, you know, music is pushing everything forward. And to your point, I love what you said to your friend or whoever asked you, you know, you're doing so much. Well, it's like, what else am I supposed to be doing? I mean, it's like,
right.
You can't hide underneath your bed until they come up with a vaccine. So I would suggest somebody wear a mask and go get something happening. So that's great.
Yep.
Well, Brandee, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and congratulations on the recording, but congratulations on the Patreon platform, because I know a lot of people that are on that, and it's very successful. And then also we're looking forward to August 27th on the Coltrane Facebook page, and we'll link that up as well. And I'm glad we're connected now, and we figured out Skype, and everything looked great, and we're happening.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun.
Definitely. Oh, it was great. And keep me posted on anything else you have happening. We'll definitely make sure everyone here in Chicago and all of our other listeners around the country are aware of it.
I will. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Brandee.
Take care.
So, Brandee Younger. So I'm going to tell everyone, I mean, I took a listen to some of the tracks, and I'm going to go do a deep dive. I know I always say that, but I am, and I was impressed. I love the sound of harp when it's done really well in jazz and funk and R&B and all that stuff. So I'm going to link everything up below. We'll send it out on Chicago Jazz Magazine, chicagojazz.com, and all that good stuff. But Brandee Younger, so Soul Awakening, BrandeeYounger.com. You guys saw the link on there, and then we'll link up the Coltrane page too, because August 27th, that's going to be exciting. She's going to be playing in the home studio. For Alice Coltrane's birthday. So, congratulations to her, and man, it was fun having her on. I was looking forward to talking to her, because, you know, I have questions about instrumentalists who play instruments that are not always like sax-based drums, because I'm just curious to find out how they evolved as a musician and how they're able to work with, you know, these types of instruments. I mean, harp in jazz and R&B and funk and hip hop and all that stuff, she kills it. So BrandeeYounger.com, Facebook, Instagram, you can find her there, Patreon, and thanks to her for being on the show. Now, I'm going to let everybody know we will be back on Thursday. Programming note, Thursday. We were going to do a couple of shows tomorrow and Wednesday, but things are just moving too fast. My schedule's getting too crazy over at the Epiphany Center this week. So Thursday we'll be back with Chicago Blues and Beyond. Dave Katzman, we're going to be announcing our special guest for Thursday coming up probably in the next day, so be aware of that. Of course, head over to epiphanyshy.com. Tickets are on sale. They're on sale. So and we're going to be announcing more and more shows. We've got Yvonne Gage is going to be playing for our Voices of Chicago. Frank Catalano is going to be playing on the 17th for our Chicago Jazz series. We've got, and you saw him last Friday, we've got Johnny Iguana for our Delmark Records night during our blues series. And we've got, who else do we have? Oh, the Crown Vic Royals are going to be playing on September 20th. Rick Lindy's going to be playing on September 13th. All those tickets are up on sale and ready to go at epiphanyshy.com. So hopefully somebody picks up a ticket. And we see you live and in person down at Epiphany Center. And I'm looking forward to getting that whole thing happening. But as usual, I thank everyone for watching, everyone for listening, everyone for staying safe, staying healthy, staying away from each other. Please wear a mask. We're going to get out of this sooner rather than later. All the past episodes, ChicagoMusicRevealed.com. If you like what you're here, as I always say, tell your neighbors, tell your family, call the grandkids. Chicago Music Revealed will be back here on Thursday, 6 p.m. Until then, I will see you on the next broadcast.